Staff, how are you doing over there?
We're just fine, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
We were getting caught up. Not on tonight's agenda, though, just on outside practices and stuff. So let's take a look at tonight's agenda. All right. Let's do the call of order, please. I will introduce the meeting. Thursday, February 20th is Newport Beach Planning Commission, our regular meeting. Staff? Yes.
Excuse me. Would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I would like Curtis to do it tonight. And Boy Scouts.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very nice. Okay. Sorry, Jim. Roll call, please.
All commissioners are present this evening with the exception of Commissioner Kleiman, who has been excused.
It's hard to hear you when you lean into that microphone. It's all muddled. It's like a cell phone. We need a new tower out here. All right. Public comments. This is the time where anybody can speak on an item not on the agenda, but is hopefully involved with city planning in the city. You have 3 minutes. Nate, state your name and address, and I see none.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's Jim. I'd like to make a quick announcement before the meeting, because at the last meeting, we had an item that staff had recommended to be removed from calendar, but the commission took the action to continue it to tonight's meeting, and it's not on the agenda. This was the Residential Development Standards Amendment, so it's not on the agenda. So I wanted to make that announcement for the public if anybody was here for that item from the previous agenda. It's not on this agenda. I'd also like to just point out we're going to do a community meeting on that on March the 9th, and then we'll return back to the Planning Commission at a future date.
All right. Yes, we have one item on the 9th. All right. Nobody here from that? Just make a comment. We'll move right on. Requests for continuances? Hearing none. Consent items. Let's do the minutes of January 23rd, 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Very good.
The motion carries unanimously.
At this time, we're doing our public hearing items. Again, speakers have 3 minutes to discuss their points and leave their name and number, phone number, address, so that you get in the records correctly. First item, number 2, amendment to setback map number S1A 2019-216, location 6501 and 03 Seashore Drive. I must say, I couldn't believe the old documents you guys dug up and put in the staff report, 1951, 50. They were tough back then, weren't they? Staff. All right. Staff, please give a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Jim Campbell, your Deputy Community Development Director. I wanted to introduce David Blumenthal. He's a planning consultant working with the city. I think he came to the commission and presented it at the last meeting, but I wanted to reintroduce him here today. So he is an extension of staff, and he's the planner for this, and he'll do the presentation on this specific project. So, David?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This request is for a code amendment and a LCP amendment to amend the setback map for the property at 6501, 6503 Seashore Drive. This request is to bring this property into consistency with the surrounding properties. So the property is located in West Newport, and it is on the corner of Walnut and Seashore Drive. It is currently improved with a duplex that was originally built in 1951. This property is zoned for the 2 units, so it is zoned R2. Quickly, the history of the property. Under the 1950s zoning code, the property was unable to be developed, so the applicant did receive a variance from the city in 1951 to deviate from the westerly side setback for 3 feet, and provided that they provided a 10-foot setback along the alley. In 1978, they received a modification to allow a second-story addition to the property, and this allowed it to go to, for the second story, 0 feet towards the seashore and 5 feet towards the alley. And the old districting maps were changed to the setback map in 2010. So here's where we are today with the current setback map. As you can see, this property is unique compared to the other properties in the area. It does call for the 10-foot setback along the alley and a 3-foot setback now along the westerly property line. The 0 setback was put into place along the length of Seashore Drive. And the property as it exists today, this is from Seashore Drive. You'll see the second floor does project out. And again, from the alley view, so you can see how that second floor projects over that 10-foot setback that was approved under that modification. The applicant's proposing to get rid of that, call out for the 3-foot on the westerly side and the 10-foot along the alley. This would bring the property into line with the other properties that extend from Orange to Prospect along the entire length of Seashore Drive there. And this is just to kind of demonstrate what the proposal will entail. Essentially, even with the proposed change, the existing duplex will comply with the setback. So we're not creating a nonconformity situation. It will be in compliance with the proposed setbacks. As proposed, there still remains a 0 setback towards Seashore Drive. There'll be 4-foot setbacks on the westerly, and Walnut Street and the alley would have the 5-foot to match the other properties in the area. And again, just looking at the setbacks that are currently provided, along with the proposed setbacks for the subject site from Walnut to Lagunia. Along Seashore, you'll see here that the other properties do have those same setbacks that the applicant is proposing. So the gist of the whole matter here is we want to get rid of that unique circumstance on this property and make it match what else is along the street there. With that, that will conclude my report and available to answer any questions you may have on that.
All right. I have several questions. Why is this in front of us? What is the applicant asking for? It seems to be non-conforming but working. Is there a plan to remodel it, tear it down, rebuild it under different standards? Those are 3 of mine.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant has indicated they are intending to sell the property, but he is here if he wants to be able to expand on the intentions for the long term for that property. Ultimately, this change provides a little extra buildable area for it. However, the city has not seen or been notified of any type of proposed remodel or addition to the existing duplex.
Okay. Staff, 1978, there was a modifications committee. What was that?
Mr. Chair, the Modifications Committee at that time was a
Variance?
staff member for planning, a staff member for public works, principally in the traffic engineering division, and a staff member for the building division. And so that committee would look at modification permits. And so they were able to reduce setbacks and similar types of relief for your unique circumstances. So it was like almost a minor variance.
All right. Commissioners, questions, staff, down the line? All right, let's do ex parte. On my left. I visited the site, that was it.
None for me.
None.
I met with the applicant's consultant, Devin Lucas, and we discussed the merits of the project and what they are looking to do moving forward, and we met on site.
All right. With that, let's go open the public hearing for the applicant, make a presentation.
Let's see if this, there we go. Thank you. Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Devin Lucas. I'm the representative and legal counsel for the applicant, which is a trust, the Feldman Family Trust, and specifically Ms. Pamela Dow as the trustee. First, we want to thank the commission and especially the staff for the time and effort on this application, specifically Greg Ramirez, David Blumenthal, and Jim Campbell, and the entire department. We've been working with them for a little while to get here, and we appreciate it. As a brief background, the Feldman family originally purchased this property back in 1974, a great time to have invested in Newport Beach real estate for sure. Unfortunately, Alvin Feldman passed away in 2006, and then Doris Feldman passed away just last year in 2019. With the family now dispersed, the trust does call for the property to be sold. It does call for a portion to go to charity and the remaining to go to the family members. In getting this property ready for sale, we discovered this very unique situation, which appears to be very moot now, from back in 1951, where essentially one variance or setback appears to have been swapped for another one, and then subsequent to that, everything was just changed. For whatever reason, our property kind of got stuck in that old map, and now if you look at it today, it has a more restrictive overlay, if you will, than everything else there. So what we're simply asking to do is essentially undo this 1951 variance and put it back to what all the other neighboring properties would be. No more, no less. And I want to emphasize that. This, if granted, would not do anything to change it beyond what any of the neighboring properties currently have. So we just want to put it back to normal. And with that, I again thank the staff and the commission for their time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, question of the applicant, please.
Not really a question, but maybe you could, since I went on site and met with you, you could see the view plane from the alleyway of all the homes that get the privilege that this particular unit or property does not. Just explain, you get the 1 foot extra that will be returned as a setback from the neighbor, and then that brick wall that's there that's kind of sticking out into the alleyway, that will be removed should somebody redevelop the property with these changes.
Yes, it's an excellent point. Right now, there is sort of a wall that is probably you would not be able to build today. So certainly if someone were to redevelop the property, again, they would have to do it to what everyone else in the neighborhood has to do. So certainly that wall that juts out would have to be removed then at the time. So it basically, whatever it was in 1951 that they traded, we just want to trade it back and put it back to the way all the other properties are. Yeah, thank you.
In that vein, that area, is there a public walkway between this duplex and the next one?
Yes, exactly, Commissioner. This property is located on a corner, so there is a street, I believe 2 public parking spots, and direct access to the ocean right there. In fact, it has an ocean view from the upper corner part of the property. Yes.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, let's proceed on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and proceed to discuss this item with staff or ourselves, or look for a motion.
I'll make a motion on it to adopt the 3 resolutions that will all make recommendations to the City Council. That would be Amendment CA 2019-08, LC 2019-007, and MD,
VA.
Revoking the variance VA 0012 and modification MD 2343. Did I get that right, staff? Okay.
That'll work.
So those are all recommendations to the council from staff.
And before we discuss the motion briefly, is Coastal Commission, is this kind of just a sniff test for them, or do they not get involved?
They will get involved. This will be an amendment to our LCP, so we'll submit that. They have the option to call it a de minimis amendment, which is basically an administrative determination that's acknowledged by the commission itself. But they could also call it a minor amendment and have a hearing, or a major amendment and take 1.5 years to do it. I'd like to think it'll be de minimis.
Okay.
That's what we're hopeful for.
All right. With that, we need a second.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you, Mark. All right.
The motion carries unanimously.
Good luck. Hope they present a nice project to us. All right, let's move right along here. Now we're going into, all right, we have the Bannockdar Institute conditional use permit. I think I pronounced that close. 2321 Irvine Avenue, and they're looking at allowable uses that aren't allowed in their medical. So, staff, please bring us up to date on this.
Thank you, Chairman. Jim Campbell again, Deputy Director. I want to introduce a new face to you folks. This is Jocelyn Perez. She's one of our newest employees. She's been with us for a little over a year now, and recently promoted to Assistant Planner. So this is her first presentation to the Commission, her first item for the Commission. So be nice, if I may be so bold as to ask. But we're here to obviously support her. She'll do a great job. Anyway, Jocelyn, we'll go ahead and give the presentation for you.
Welcome. You got to learn the mic first.
True. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, and thank you, Commissioners. The request in front of you tonight is for a conditional use permit for a medical office. The project is located along Irvine Avenue, across the street from the golf course there. It's surrounded by residential uses. The project site is zoned Santa Ana Heights Specific Plan, SP7, Professional Administrative Office District, so PA. So something unique about this zoning district is there are no uses that are permitted by right. However, the zoning code has a list of uses that are allowable subject to approval of a minor use permit. So you can see professional and administrative office is on this list. However, medical office is not on this list. If you jump down to subsection 2, you'll see that any use which the Planning Commission finds consistent with the purpose and intent of this district would be allowed. So if this request sounds somewhat familiar, it's because you have seen 2 similar requests within the last 3 years. The first request was for a CUP for a medical office for a chiropractic facility back in November of 2017. And then also for an outpatient surgery center approved last year. So this specific office, an approximately 3,300 square foot medical office. It'll provide non-surgical aesthetic treatments. It'll operate between normal business hours from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There'll be 2 employees, so very small scale. And there is adequate parking. What I have for you here is a parking summary. I wanted to highlight that the site requires 301 parking spaces, and 301 parking spaces are provided. Here I have the floor plan of the proposed medical office. You'll see on the first floor, that's accessed by patients. We have a reception area and 4 treatment rooms. As you can see on the left, the upper level is only for staff. That's for administrative purposes only, and the project is conditioned that way because the office does not provide an accessible elevator. Staff is able to make the required findings for a conditional use permit. We believe that this use is consistent with the zoning and the general plan. We believe that a medical office is compatible with the surrounding professional and administrative office uses. The site is adequate for this use. It's accessed by Irvine, there's adequate parking, and we've seen from past approvals that there's no detriment by approving this use. By having those 2 others operating for over a year now, we have that evidence. So, staff is recommending we conduct a public hearing, find the project categorically exempt from CEQA, and approve the conditional use permit. Additionally, staff is asking the commission to direct the community development director to prepare a determination that medical office uses and similar uses are consistent with the purpose and intent of the SP7 PA district and are therefore an allowable use with a minor use permit. And that goes back to that table I showed you guys of the explicitly permitted uses. So going forward, any applications for a medical office would be heard by the zoning administrator rather than come in front of the commission. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Burrows. Go back to that graphic showing the parking matrix. Thank you. It shows required 301. The total is 319. Number of required spaces waived 18. Now, was that, I remember this coming in the last two requests. One was for a tutoring operation. Jim, you remember that. And have we talked to the other owners? Because this is a condominium office park, I believe. Different people own different buildings, or maybe it's suites. I'm not.
Yes, you are correct. This is a condominium development, and I do recall that prior application, it was for a tutoring center, and that was what the waiver was for.
Are they still in business there?
As far as I know, yes.
I mean, it was touch and go because we thought it would be too complicated and a lot of drop off and pick up and this and that. I'm just wondering, seeing nobody, no letters in on this, I guess everybody's comfortable.
That's what's been represented to us by the applicant's representative. We didn't, during our site visits, see any indications or issues. And this process, again, we provided public notice to all the owners in the area, and it gives them an opportunity to let us know what they think about it. If there was a detriment to the area that we didn't know about or didn't discover on our own, they would be here tonight, and they obviously have that opportunity.
One thing I do like, and that I heard from the staff in the report, that you're going to look at a procedure to take this down to a different level than ours.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the fourth recommendation here is, in essence, to make the determination that similar uses such as this, these small medical offices, would be consistent with the purpose and intent. You know, we saw that action taken twice previously by this commission, and obviously we're recommending that this evening. And if you're agreeable, what we would do is do that determination, in essence, to say, hey, the medical office is consistent with purpose and intent, and then it would become a minor use permit consistent with all the other allowed activities in this zone. So then we would treat it the same as everything else. We would have a public hearing, but it would be at the zoning administrator level. We'd like to do that to basically save applicants. It does take a little, there's a higher cost to get here to the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit. And then we can save time and applicants' money to go to the zoning administrator in the future for similar uses. And at that point, we can evaluate, and reevaluate parking if there is an issue that might arise. Now, if there's a parking shortfall that might come in due to more changes in use, then obviously that would come to the Planning Commission for your review.
The Planning Commission is worth it, though, in my opinion.
Well, we believe so, yes.
All right. Questions of staff, please. Yes, Mr.
So
Wagon.
on the list of, for item number 4, what the direction that we would allow the director to make those decisions through the ZA, do we have a list of those medical services provided that you would be able to approve versus those that potentially would need to default to us? Mostly concerned with licensed treatment facilities. So the concentration of those sometimes exists in our neck of the woods. So I just want to be making sure that we're preventing that from being something that doesn't come to us.
We can definitely do that. So the process that would be involved is the director will provide a written determination and sign it, and we can put that on our weekly report, so you'll actually get a copy of it, so you can see precisely how we've defined this. But at the moment, we're looking at just medical office uses. similar to what you've seen here, the chiropractic facility that you saw before, the outpatient surgery, and then this facility, or similar small-scale facilities. But a licensed treatment facility, are you thinking of sort of a residential care facility of some kind?
No,
I'm not
no,
sure.
for recovering patients that, sometimes they're ordered by the court to appear, but sometimes they're also trying to detox. And so sometimes those medical practices involve drawing blood and, that type of service. So I want to just make sure that, that we're prevented from, and I don't want to say that I would restrict that by any means, but I'd like it to come to the Planning Commission and not be something that's heard at a ZA level. So I'm just kind of looking to make sure that the city's protected and that there's a list that we could sign off on tonight, or maybe not tonight, but in the future, to say, okay, these are like this. I don't have an issue with this proposal at all. And I think very similar ones would be fine. But the moment we start doing ones where there's a high concentration of individuals maybe that are being not detrimental, but impacting the area, they might not even have parking restrictions. They may be dropped off by a van, let's say, and then there's an abundant amount of folks with just one vehicle, and that they're causing disruption to the existing businesses. So I'm just making sure we're protected.
Commissioner Weigand, we can certainly explore all the different facets of this and make sure that it's consistent with state and federal law, as well as address the concerns that you raise here right now.
Thank you. No comments, questions, staff, of the staff? All right. Is the applicant present for a presentation?
Chair Ketting, if we could just do ex-parte communications at this point.
Good evening, Chairman and Board of...
Excuse me, I forgot one thing. I was just reminded, ex parte on this?
None.
None?
None for me.
I spoke with the applicants once.
I have not.
First, to address Mr. Weigand's issue, the way that facility, the way that whole project is, and the way the applications are, you're not going to have any type of a medical. I've done the other two that we brought in here. You're not going to have any type of medical that you're talking about where there's either surgeries or a lot of outpatients or things of that nature. Between the fire and everything else, it just is not feasible to do. So I understand your concern, I appreciate it, but the owners of the complex are not having any type of intent to do that. Otherwise, Ms. Perez did a wonderful job. It's been a joy working with her, even though she is a rookie. And I'm here to answer any questions. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to what we have in the other two. It's a very low-keyed medical facility that's going in that does some outpatient stuff. There's no surgeries, there's no drawing blood, there's no medical like that. Nobody's put under anesthesia or anything of that nature.
Let me interrupt real quick. I didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil Greer. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I apologize.
No problem, no problem. It says in here that they think they'll have 5 to 7 patients a day. 40 minutes a person. That's, if you take 6, figure the math, it's 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Out of 8, 9?
It's, she's currently over at Pacific Coast Highway in Avocado. She's moving over here. It's a high-end, beauty aesthetic thing. I obviously don't go.
Who knows?
Who knows? But it's an esoteric type of thing. So yeah,
All
it's
right.
not gonna. You're not going to see 20, 30 people a day going through that process.
All right, very good. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience?
Chair Ketting and members of the commission, my name is Jim Moser. First of all, to Vice Chair Weigand's point, I would like to remind the commissioners you all have the power to call up for review any item that is heard by the zoning administrator. It's not a power that seems to have been used very vigorously in the last few years, but I would certainly encourage you to review the zoning administrator agendas and anything that you see on that that you think is of concern, you should be calling it up for a more thorough discussion here. The second point I would make is with regard to this and the previous two applications, it would seem to me appropriate to ask if there is any other zoning district in the Santa Ana Heights specific plan that does call for medical uses, so that there is an area that was planned for them. And if there was, then you would kind of question why you're putting it in the area that was not specifically planned for them. And then the final point I would make, I also was surprised by the claim that this was going to be so lightly used, 5 to 7 clients per day, each of them staying there for less than an hour. And I would remind you, as two former planning commission chairs that I can recall would always remind the commissioners, the use permit you are approving runs with the land. The plan you're approving has 4 treatment rooms. So clearly a future owner of this facility with different concept of how to operate it could be using it at much higher volume than the 5 to 7 per day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Seeing nobody else, I'll close this portion of the hearing and we'll talk to the staff. Questions, commissioners? Issues, items? Eric?
Just to address Mr. Greer's comment, so the SB 7 that this area is in, would this allow staff to administratively approve medical in some of the other pink that's shown on the map that is also SB 7, or is it just specifically this center where it's highlighted in the red?
We can pull up the SB 7 land use map here momentarily, but it would be for this particular property for sure. We can maybe comment on that if Ben pulls it up. It's really only this particular site.
Okay, because we had another item that we saw, I think, on this commission saw when there was a medical use not in compliance, and we found it, or staff found it, and then they came to us, and then we approved it. But that was some time ago. Well, that was probably a year ago, or Commissioner Ketting will probably remember that one. But I'm looking at the pink, and it also shows the same.
We recall that site. So, and it also is responsive to Mr. Mosier's question, what other zones in this specific plan allow for medical office use? And there is another zone. It's called the BP zone, or Business Park Zone. And that actually was the subject of that prior case that you saw. That one went in without proper permits, so it needed its use permit. It also needed a parking waiver, so that's why you saw that particular one, because that was, again, it's a different zone.
Gotcha. Okay.
That was the one on Coast Highway, across from the 76 station. No?
No, this was in that same area. It was off, I think, Mesa Drive when it curled up and it went back there.
Oh, over here on this side.
In the same area.
It's in the
Okay,
same
so
area.
we're just, sorry to segue into that. We're just going to be dealing with the red highlighted area tonight.
Just with the red highlighted
for-
area. And if
for you
and-
to have.
Yes, and
Okay.
if the commission does take the recommended actions, we would do a determination, and we would write down what the medical office use would look like, and then as a determination, you could review that. And Mr. Mosier is correct. If the commission saw a particular item that you felt of interest, you could call it for review. But again, ultimately, that determination would only apply to this office complex.
And this commissioner, once again, will state his concerns that I believe our medical use parking standards are too low. You always wait in the lobby, you wait in that little room, then you wait again, then you go down the hall, et cetera, et cetera. I think staff, I think you really need to look at that. You go to any one of these over near the hospital, you circle around the parking lot forever to get a parking spot. Just for future reference. Thank you. That's it. All right. No other comments? Let's close this and have a vote. Let's have a motion. Lee?
I'll make a motion.
UP, go ahead. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I'll make a motion
Sarah.
to approve conditional use permit number UP 2019-045 as written.
I'll second.
There we go.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, just for clarification, the motion was to approve the use permit about the fourth recommended action here, which is the determination that the director would make for future applications. And is that included in the motion?
That is included.
Okay. So in essence, you're asking, the motion is to approve staff's recommendation as presented.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, moving right along. Item number 4 is the accessory dwelling unit ordinance update, PA 2019-248, code amendment, CA 2019-009, and local coastal program amendment, LC 2019-008. This is for citywide. City of Newport is the applicant. Please proceed on a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David Blumenthal for the Planning Division again. Excuse me. Tonight we're talking about the ADU laws that are placed in the state and proposed code amendment and LCP amendment that is before you. As you recall, last time I was before you, we did talk a little bit about some mandated state changes to our ADU laws, and tonight we're actually presenting the necessary changes to the Newport Beach Municipal Code. As a reminder, the state adopted several new laws, 3 of that apply, change the way that ADUs are being done throughout the state, including in Newport Beach. This, I'm not expecting anyone to read this slide, and I'm not going to read this word for word for you, but a couple of key notes I do want to point out for you. Under the state's new ADU laws, the ADUs and JADUs are not considered density for general plans and zoning. They are considered to be compliant with the existing and allowed densities under that, the general plan and zoning laws. Also, as of January 1st, the city's current ADU ordinances have been voided by the new state laws, so we're under the minimal default state standards as of today until the new ADU laws are adopted. So as a refresher, accessory dwelling units versus junior accessory dwelling units, we use these terms quite a bit. Accessory dwelling units are allowed in all residential mixed-use zone, basically any place that a residence can go, an accessory dwelling unit can go. We have to allow 800, I apologize, it's never on my slide, it's 850 square foot for 1 bedroom and 1,000 square foot for 2 bedrooms. The minimum size that someone could build is an 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit. You can convert from existing floor area in your home, or you can build new accessory dwelling units. The state has waived all owner occupancy requirements until January 1st, 2025. Now, the state did say that they can be rented separately from the main dwelling, but you cannot sell them separately. And for purposes of the building and fire codes, they are considered a separate unit, so just like any kind of duplex, those building and fire codes will apply. Now, junior accessory dwelling units are meant to be a little bit more simpler, a little bit easier to build. They are only allowed to conversion in the single-family residential units only, and they have a maximum size of 500 square feet. One provision is that the owner occupancy does apply for junior accessory dwelling units, so the owner would have to live in either one of the units. Again, they cannot be sold separately. They can share a bathroom with the primary dwelling unit, and under our building codes, they are not considered a separate unit. So what that means is the fire separation requirements don't apply to junior accessory dwelling units. They don't have to provide separate heating and air conditioning. They will have an efficiency kitchen, so a smaller version of a kitchen, but again, they can share the sanitary facilities or the bathrooms with the main house. So going through the new requirements of the code, again, location, previously it was just single family zones. Now it's going to be any zone that you can put a residential unit on. In the single family zones, it's possible to do 1 ADU plus 1 JADU. In the multiple family zones, you can build up to 25% of the existing unit count on that property. Minimum lot sizes have been eliminated, so there's no longer any minimum lot size. The maximum unit size for ADUs is, again, 850 square feet for the one bedroom, 1,000 for two bedrooms. JADUs are capped at 500 square feet. Now, one thing that we wanted to clarify, and this is not in your staff report, and we're recommending a slight change to your recommendation to City Council. We've gotten word back from HCD. We had asked the question about conversion of space and limits on the height or the sizes of conversion of existing space. HCD actually returned an email to us after the staff report was drafted and sent out to you. For those conversion space, there is no maximum that applies. So as this item moves to council, we'll clean up that language to show that there is no maximum for conversion of existing space. If you have an existing house, you basically divide that up the way you want for the main and the accessory dwelling unit. Height, if it's attached, it'll just fall to the base zone. Detached is 16 feet. Your previous code had 14 feet. Setbacks, again, that does still apply to our base zone, except for when it's a detached accessory dwelling unit, then side and rear setbacks are at 4 feet. As I noted before, the owner occupancy requirements are suspended until January 1st, 2025, except for the junior accessory dwelling units. Those will still apply. And garage conversions, the state did say no longer require replacement parking for garage conversions, so that is no longer required if someone wants to convert the garage. Now, we do have an exception in the Newport Beach code that we built in, and this is that in the coastal area, the coastal zone, garage conversions still require parking. We had a discussion with coastal staff. Coastal staff has indicated that they are concerned by garage conversions taking away necessary parking for coastal access. The ADU laws that the state passed are very clear that the Coastal Act still applies. So we have built into the LCP amendment to replace parking if you do decide to convert your garage. This is a map of the coastal zone so you can kind of get an idea of how much of the city that actually will apply for. So in these areas, if someone wants to convert the garage, they will need to provide replacement parking. The other key thing is the parking changes, and I did touch base on this the last time I was before you. Parking is waived for a lot of items for ADUs. One thing that the state did clarify is how close to transit it is, the half-mile of walking distance now to transit. The rest of the parking waive is the way your code is currently written, so we are not proposing any changes to the way you have it now. This is just to kind of give you an idea of those transit areas. Again, for a ADU that is within a half mile, these are the transit stops that you see before there. If it's a half-mile walking distance, they will not be required any additional parking. The word of caution I'm going to give you on this is these are half-mile radiuses, not the actual walking distances. And if you recall, this was the example of how a walking distance would actually work. So we would actually go to a use like Google Maps and be able to determine walking distances. We did receive public comments. Those have been distributed before you. A couple of things I would like to note on those comments. One of the comments did point out an error. Table 2.9 in section 20.22.200 was not included in the draft changes before you for the Title 20 changes. That deals with the two of our mixed-use zones that was inadvertently left out. So again, as this moves to council, we'll include those to allow accessory dwelling units into those changes. That same letter pointed out several Scrivener's errors, typographical and the spelling errors. We'll go ahead and clean up and make sure those are addressed. The letter did also point out several syntax errors, I guess, just the way things are worded, maybe wording things differently. Those changes will not be incorporated into the resolutions as they move on to the council. So before you tonight, you do have recommendations for council to amend Title 20 and submit an application to the Coastal Commission to amend Title 21. And with that, we will conclude our report and be able to answer any questions you may have on this.
The chair will ask a few. What's the timeline on this?
We intend to be before council, hopefully in March, and then that'll allow us then to submit to the Coastal Commission.
So HCD has given us 60 days to get this done or something? Or is this our own timetable?
This is our own timeline. We are currently under the state's minimal standards right now because our ordinances are no longer valid.
So, Mr. Chair, what we'd like to do is to proceed forward as quickly as we can. We've introduced as restrictive of requirements within our draft ordinance as we think are legal, and they're consistent with state law. There's very little latitude here as to what we can do. But we'd like to get the ordinance on the books as quickly as we can, because right now we're operating under the state's kind of minimalist ordinance. And so, I think the principal difference there is really that parking issue in the coastal zone, where we would want to have the parking be, the garage conversions not eliminate the parking. We felt that would be an impact to public access, especially on the peninsula areas. So we want to move forward as quickly as we can, so we're not, just using the default state ordinance.
And you cannot build, by my reading, an ADU in a commercial zone?
No, you cannot.
Any particular reason they carved that out? Accessory unit in the back of it, or above it?
The way that the state laws were written is any place that you currently allow residential, this is where you can put the accessory dwelling unit. So if we have a mixed-use zone that allows commercial and residential, then yes. But if it's a strict commercial zone, then they're not introducing residential to those zones.
Okay. What if somebody has a vacant R1 lot somewhere in the city? Hard to believe, but there could be one. Could you build 4 or 5 of these, depending on the lot size, on that single-family lot?
So if it's a single lot, that would be one single-family home.
What if there's nothing there?
It would be part of a proposed single-family home. They couldn't just build them separately.
Okay.
So they could propose a single-family home with a JADU incorporated into the single-family home and a detached ADU. So they end up with 3 units, the main house, the JADU, and the ADU.
All right. What about garage conversions that the owner didn't take a permit out, but there's somebody living in them?
There's a provision.
Can we go back and knock on their door and say, okay, we're going to count this as one of them, or?
So there is a provision in the new state laws to kind of give people a grace period to come in and get those legalized. Absolutely, once the city does find them, code enforcement can proceed to ask the people to come in and get their permits as necessary. And then once those permits are issued, then we do count them. Until the permits are actually issued, they're not there legally, so we don't count them.
All right. Thank you. Commissioners, questions of the staff? Eric?
I have a couple mostly on parking stuff. Has the city explored any ideas to incentivize those that fall in that area where parking can be waived? So to reward the ADU, JADU applicant with something in order to provide the parking so that it doesn't become a burden in the neighborhoods? Has the city explored anything with incentives for those homeowners exploring the options that they have?
Commissioner Weigand, the answer is no. We haven't provided any kind of incentive within the ordinance. It's not that we couldn't look at that. I think that's a novel idea to incentivize that, provide some other relief somewhere else, if you will, something of value to the homeowner to maintain the parking, as I understand the incentive might be. We can take a look at that question, but I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's important for the residents to get something back out of this, because I think there's a lot of fear out there that these are going to pop up all over their neighborhood, and next thing you know, that their streets are littered with cars. And not that that's something that's a terrible thing, but that could be a burdensome to a lot of our residents. And then as you go down on handwritten 5, there was a host of those waivers for parking. What is a car share pickup and drop-off location? Is that something that we have in the city, or I've never really heard of such a thing?
Yeah, the city doesn't currently have one. Common names that have been used, like Zipcar, you've probably heard of, I think GoCar is another one. They're not very successful business operations, so you don't see a lot of them.
And then the next one, architecturally and historic significant. Historic districts, we don't have anything like that. Maybe
No.
I could think Balboa Island could be potentially, but that's in the coastal zone. But, is there any of that in their cities?
Yeah. None in the city.
And then the last one, parking permit areas. I think Newport Island, Newport Harbor High School area, maybe the peninsula. Do those have the parking passes or parking permits? So those areas now get waived, or how does that address those areas?
What I can say is we have 3 permit parking areas, as you indicated, Newport Island, the area around Aurelia Street, around Newport, Coronado Mar High School, and then we also have a parking permit program near Newport Harbor High School. So we have those 3 areas, and maybe David can answer the question as to how that would work with this ordinance.
Yeah, for those areas, parking will be waived only if the parking passes are not provided to the occupants of the ADU. So if they provide a pass for the ADU occupant, then parking's not waived.
So essentially, they would get one of the stickers for
Yes.
living there, not one of the temporary passes.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Quick question. What about maybe we covered this before, but homeowners associations that have design criteria, that have height restrictions?
So the state, in addition to the regulations that put on to the cities, they did tackle the homeowners associations. They did say that homeowner associations for single-family zones can't prohibit them, but they can still provide reasonable regulations like their architectural standards.
Go ahead. Mark? Comment?
I had some of these
Question?
same questions this evening, but I think one item I didn't hear anything about was capacity, and I don't know if the city has any kind of sewer capacity or water pressure issues within the community as a whole. Is that a potential problem?
I'm not aware of any particular areas of interest that have deficiencies in the infrastructure, but yeah, as we see these build out, and if we actually experience some infrastructure issues, then we would have to go in and install larger mains if necessary. As I said, I'm not aware of any, but again, with the state taking this preemptive step, what we're doing is making the ordinances comply. We're not actually anticipating that we're going to have thousands of these here, but we might have several hundred of them over the years. We'll have to kind of see how it goes, but if we do experience any infrastructure deficiencies, we'll just have to beef it up to keep up with demand.
So there was something in here about that the arena numbers, which were obviously quite large for us. We haven't been able to calculate how many of these we're going to be able to use within the calculation. I'm not even sure if I'm forming that correctly, but when will we know how many of these we'll be able to use so that we can plan accordingly? Does that make sense?
Yes. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission, Jaime Murillo. Yeah, so the ADUs do count towards our arena, and that's clear in the law, and we have been reporting the ADUs that we've been permitting to the state for credit towards our arena. The big question is how are the ADUs going to help the city meet our arena goals, especially the anticipated 4,800 units for this next planning cycle. The changes in state law do say that ADUs can count towards our sites inventory, and that's the inventory of sites that we show the state that we have the capacity to accommodate the arena allocation we're given. However, what's not clear is it's very subjective. So right now the state, we're waiting for HCD to prepare a memorandum that explains how ADUs will count towards our sites inventory. We don't know. They keep saying it's coming out soon, but we're still waiting. They haven't really given us a date. But before we start our housing element update process, that should be out and we'll have better guidance. Another thing the city is doing, we've requested help from Senator Morlock and Assemblymember Cotty Peter Norris to sponsor bills that would amend the law to make it very clear and provide very objective standards that all cities could rely on, and utilizing ADUs to count towards our housing element sites inventory. And so we just released the request last week, and we're waiting to see if we get some traction with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Quick question. Somebody wants to build one of these, they pull a permit and pay the fees, correct? Standard fees, building, utilities, et cetera.
That's correct. So they would have to go through the plan check process like any other unit or remodel. That'll get reviewed by the multiple departments, just building, public works, planning, make sure it complies with code, and then they'll get a building permit, and then there'll be an inspection process as well.
Are these expedited, or, you know, like the,
Currently not. It would go through the same standard process. There is time limits within the law that the city has to issue these building
standard?
permits.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions, let's open this up to the public and see what comments we get.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is David Tanner, 223 62nd Street. I'd like to talk a little bit about this tonight and give you another side of the picture. Well, this seems to be just bringing state law and our local coastal plan into conformance with state law. There's another side to this that wasn't included in your staff report. I'd like to talk about that. The local coastal plan is that portion of the general plan that is within the local coastal zone. The local coastal plan has two components, a land use component and an implementation component, and it's my understanding that the amendment tonight is to the implementation component of the local coastal plan. The implementation component is basically the zoning administrative side where land use kind of speaks for itself. So because the law has changed, the general plan and the local coastal plan are inconsistent with state laws. They both need to be updated. There's a process in place right now to bring the general plan current with state law, housing element. We're having some hard times figuring out how we're going to do that, particularly given the RENA numbers. What I'd like to talk about is what will happen in reality. The housing law is a ministerial process now. The city can't say no. Somebody comes in with a manufactured home, says, I want to take a crane, put this in my backyard. They don't go through building. It's already pre-approved. So there isn't anything anybody can do about this according to the state law. The city passed a ordinance back in 2017 after the first ADU law was passed by the state to limit this, to get it away from the coastal area, 5,000 square foot minimum lot size. The new law that invalidated that law, so we're basically in compliance with the state law. And if somebody comes in today, the city isn't going to say you can't do it because our code is not updated. They're going to do it. So what will be the practical effect of this? Well, not every unit is going to do this. It's ministerial. From a planning standpoint, you cannot say we're only going to have 200 of these in 5 years. You're going to have to look at this and say, gee, at some point in the future, every single house, every single multifamily unit could do this. And you've got issues. Like if someone comes in and says, I want to build a 100-unit multifamily project, are you charging fees to them based on 100 units? Or are you going to charge fees on them based on 100 unit plus an accessory dwelling unit plus a junior accessory dwelling unit as allowed? What are you going to do? If someone came in and said, well, I'm going to do this up front, how are you going to charge them? You don't know. These things aren't worked out yet. So there's a lot of things that still have to be worked out, including the update to the general plan. And this LCP is linked to the general plan. So the practical effect from a planning standpoint is that this local coastal plan amendment within the coastal zone will allow over, Mr. Chairman, may I have a few extra minutes?
You may have.
Thank you.
Two more.
It will allow over a doubling of the population within the coastal zone. A doubling. This doubling of population is going to have adverse environmental effects that will be significant, particularly in the event of a natural emergency that requires evacuation on short notice, such as happened in Malibu with the Woolsey Fire in 2018. So what I'd like to recommend is that you hear public testimony, discuss this tonight, you table this, and let the city council, who has a three-pronged approach to deal with the RENA numbers, the housing element update, all of these laws, the 18 laws that were passed in October of last year, including SB 881, which I think is a dominant ADU housing law, let them figure out a policy on how to deal with a lot of these things, because basically what you're doing tonight is you're circumventing one of the mayor's policies, which said maybe we're going to fight these laws. Maybe we can't live with 4,800 RENA numbers and a doubling of the population within the city from these ADUs, which is on the books. It won't happen, but it's on the books. It could happen, and we cannot ignore it. So I suggest that you consider this, but we wait and try and get some direction from the city council. I know the city council is concerned about this as to how we deal with these collateral issues that if we choose to fight and we have processed what looks like just a simple compliance mechanism without going through CEQA, without disclosing to the public, without letting them have their say, that this is going to be very controversial when the word gets out that, oh, gee, the Planning Commission just recommended doubling the density within the coastal zone, and we didn't have a say, and this isn't anticipated in any of our plans, and by doing this, you will create an inconsistency between the land use component of this plan because of the local coastal plan, because it did not anticipate this density, and it will also be inconsistent with the general plan because it did not anticipate this density. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mosier, I see you moving toward your podium.
Chair Ketting, members of the commission, my name is Jim Mosier. That this is difficult to comment intelligently on in 3 minutes. We've been told that as of January 1st, whatever regulations we had about accessory dwelling units are no more, and our current regulation is buried somewhere in the state government code, which extends over, and I did look at it, some 3,900 words, parts of which apparently nobody can actually tell what they mean without asking somebody in the state government, which is a slightly odd situation. They have been condensed here down to two smaller sections of code. They're still rather lengthy and convoluted. I think if you are making a recommendation to the city council and certainly the public would appreciate knowing what the difference is between adopting this recommendation versus our current status where we are subject to the state code. That is not clearly explained in the staff report. By the time it gets to the city council, I hope it will have some table of that kind showing under the default rules, what are the rules, and taking this action, how is it changing those? Like Mr. Tanner, I also hope that the city will challenge this, and for that purpose, I would hope in the recommendation, in the findings supporting the recommendation, say that we're doing this because we think we have to do it. The state has told us we have to, but we don't necessarily accept that concept that they have the authority to tell us what to do. If I understand the current code, which I may not, in the areas outside the coastal zone, this effectively eliminates any off-street parking requirement in residential areas. As I understand it, somebody with a residence outside the coastal zone, if they convert their garage into an ADU that does not have a separate bedroom in it, then there is zero parking requirement for that ADU or for the house, apparently, because they don't have to replace that. So I do not see what the state's interest is in forcing residential areas to do all their parking on the street, let alone any compelling state interest in that. or an interest that that is the only way that they could achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. So I do hope we leave the challenge option open. I am concerned, as I quoted in writing, in those 3,900 words towards the beginning, it said that local jurisdictions can designate areas in which ADUs will be allowed based on the adequacy of the water and sewer and the impact that the accessory dwelling units may have on traffic flow and public safety. And I'm wondering how carefully the city staff considered whether there are any areas in our city where we could say we do have an impact, and perhaps they should not be allowed, or the number of them needs to be capped to keep those impacts at a manageable level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Anybody else take a swing at this? All right, we'll close the hearing, and the commission can discuss these thoughts with staff and ourselves. I'll jump right in on that one. Mr. Tanner said, why don't we slow this down and take a look at the combinations of the RENA numbers, the housing element with these ADUs, and the impact that apparently the state is kind of brushing to the side on parking, population density, and now Mr. Mosier brought up utility. Where are we on that? Can we challenge? Does this have to precede that? Can we just say no?
Thank you, Chair Keding. We did receive direction from the City Council, just, to preface this in terms of bringing this ordinance forward. So that is, that's the basis of why we're here today on this matter. As I've, indicated in the past, the state continues to encroach on our rights in spite of the fact that we are a charter city, and that is a reality that we'll have to accept and evaluate as we go along. There is a recent decision that came out in San Jose that found that even with respect to surplus properties, that charter cities were subject to state law requirements. So doesn't always bode as well as we would like it, but that's something that we would certainly evaluate and discuss with the City Council.
All right. Comments, commissioners, questions?
So we're making a simple recommendation to the council. Is there other alternatives we can make, not making a recommendation, but moving this along to the council? I think the council obviously has a directive to get the process rolling, but as the gentleman said, he wants us to take direction from the council, but that's not the way the process works. So if the council kind of has objectives already, are we just simply being a part of the process here? And have you worked with other cities to formulate this program? I mean, we're not the only city affected by this. So have you guys kind of compared notes with other similar coastal cities that are kind of in our region to address that? And then Mr. Mosier brought up a good point about, what happens if we're out of compliance? So today we're out of compliance and everything falls to what the state's rule and sets are. So we have some flexibility approving this that will strengthen our community a little bit more than what the state's guidelines are. So I think to his point, that it would be nice to kind of see, okay, well, if we just say no tonight and the council says no and we're just going to challenge it, and at some point that could go the wrong direction. What are our ramifications as a city by not approving the plan that you guys so thoughtfully put together?
Well, first of all, thank you for those comments, and we'll try to respond to as many as we can, and so help us through that if you might have questions if we've not addressed everything in that. We are taking direction from the City Council, as Yolanda indicated, and so we're bringing forward the ordinance to make our ordinance comport with state law. We are taking one liberty, and that is with the not allowing conversions in the coastal zone due to an impact to coastal access, and because the Coastal Act is still applicable here even with these laws. And so there is the concern about, sewer and water and, should we step back and study the areas to see if we do have any deficiencies. We don't know of any deficiencies. And I think we'd have to also look at what the assumptions would be. I think to suggest that we'd have a doubling of the population in the city or in the coastal zone, I think is a bit much. I don't think we're going to see that. We've seen 16 requests for permits in the recent time. 11 are under construction and 5 are still in the review process. So I don't think that we're going to see, even over the next 10 years, that many thousands. So, even if we were to make assumptions that we might have several hundred or several thousand even in the community, the impact to our infrastructure, we've already built into our general plan the capacity for many thousands of units that are yet unbuilt. And we have the capacity to serve those units. And so these additional ones, while potentially troubling to our infrastructure, we don't think that the production is going to be so high over the years that it's going to, get us fully outside of our general plans, if you will. But, in terms of wanting to, step back and fight this on a legal front, I think that's a decision for the city council to make. And so I think we can bring that up in the discussions with the city council. Now, in terms of alternatives that the commission could entertain, you could, through your recommendation, offer suggestions that, different aspects of this be evaluated before passing an ordinance at the city council. And then the city council can consider those recommendations and, formulate what the best policy forward would be for the city. So hopefully I've addressed most of your questions.
Did you work with any other cities on formulating this?
Yes, sir. We actually did. We reviewed with several other cities, looked at several of the cities nearby, Irvine, Huntington, Westminster. Additionally, with my own experience as a planning consultant, I've worked with several other coastal cities in drafting their ordinances and including their city attorneys. I will tell you that the ordinance that's before you tonight is the most conservative of the ones I've seen so far, and just basically takes Newport to the minimal standards required by the state.
Yeah, and then if you could touch on that question that I had too, what are those? Or will the city council get a chance to kind of see what happens if the state gets their way versus if we had, this ordinance passed? I think that would be helpful to know how, to the public especially, to know how bad things could be if we didn't approve our version.
So I'm sure the council is looking into this with their.
I think then that's
With the
why I
city
think it's
attorney.
important to know that the next step is the council, and they are going to be very much engaged in this topic. So stalling it here is only going to make things worse, in my opinion. I think moving it along will benefit the council because then they get their grasp and they're tackling. What is the committee that the city council formed to address the RENA? They recently. Weren't they forming some committee that dealt with?
The city council did formulate a committee. It's called the Housing Element Update Committee, and that's really for the update of the housing element. So it's not really to tackle this issue specifically or other housing issues that we're grappling with, but it's really for the future update of the general
But they're
plan.
putting their strength and emphasis on housing, RENA, these things. So I think they're the most qualified to go, and not to say that we're unqualified. I think we just are kind of putting our eyes to it, having these discussions for the public, moving it along to the council, and then letting the council, whose strength is really in this right now, especially our Mayor O'Neill, he's really digging in. I read the letter that he had sent to our legislators, and it's pretty intense. So I think that this council is really paying attention to those RENA numbers, and this kind of falls into it because they're seeking credit for, or want to seek credit for these ADUs and JADUs. So I think it all kind of intertwines. While it might be slightly different, I think it's all part of the thing that will bond us together, and I think the council is on the right page. So I think we can move this.
All right, let's move to the next. Tell us again, if this is moved, if we approve this and move it up to council and they adopt it, then it goes to HCD to review, the Coastal Commission to review, and they're going to ping pong it back down here probably and bring up other issues. It'll probably resurface itself. Best thing I heard is that this very conservative standards, I mean, they might understand that up there too and want something else. You know, I see us going nowhere but to approve this tonight and move it on back up until we put our foot in the water up in Sacramento and see what they think. And then one other question, when does the Coastal Commission standards conflict with HCD on these things? Who supersedes who? Not known?
That's it. That is a good question. You are right. The ordinance goes to, once adopted, it'll go to HCD for review for consistency with state law. We do believe that this ordinance is. That prohibition of conversion and the loss of parking in the coastal zone, again, that's a reflection, an application of our LCP and our concern that that would violate the Coastal Act, and we feel we're justified in making that. So they may have an opinion about that. We are getting guidance from the Coastal Commission staff that we're on the right path in that regard. And so you're right, we could end up with, two divergent views on how this all works. And so I couldn't tell you who's going to trump, which State Department is going to trump any of this. And obviously, if there are different views, we'll have to bring it back and then possibly do a cleanup amendment to fix it. So, but at this point in time, based on what we know, we feel this ordinance is appropriate to move forward.
And meanwhile, people are processing a few of these applications under our current standards, not these.
We're processing them basically under the state standard right now.
Okay.
And again, in some respects, very limited respects, they're looser than what we're proposing, and hence why we want to move this thing forward quickly and then get these policy questions and issues addressed by the City Council. And if they see fit to move forward and adopt an ordinance, then we'll have at least that base standard in place for requests once that's made. So again, it's not necessarily the urgency of the matter, but we do want to put an ordinance in place that reflects the city's values, rather than be just left with the state default ordinance.
Very good answer. And we have 4 commissioners who are actively working in the real estate development, a lot of residential work. I'd like to hear from you guys, if you've run across this throughout the state, not outside of California, though. You see anything like this coming up in any projects or master plan communities you're working on?
I haven't seen it in terms of master planning or in terms of our projects, but I have been attending seminars on how all of these bills affect cities and how they affect developers. And there's definitely two different viewpoints on that, but they all come back to a document like this, which is very difficult. So I think that something needs to be in place to protect our city. And I think staff has done a great job of trying to package that up for us. So I don't know if that answers the question you're asking, but.
Sarah, do you see anything in your professional career these days?
Yeah, I've worked on projects in other cities where there is a housing crisis and they are utilizing ADUs as an avenue to help provide housing in those cities.
Similar?
Similar to this, yes. I do have one question of Jim, and I think you answered it. In the interim, this currently is state law, and so if an applicant comes in with an ADU or junior ADU proposal that currently does not meet city code or zoning regulations, do we then default to what the state has currently put in place?
Yeah, that's indeed correct. The laws that became effect January 1st basically invalidated all of our existing ordinance, so we really don't even have an ADU ordinance at this point in time. And so we want to put this on the books to avoid using the default state standard. So the default state standard is what we're applying today.
Yeah. I think that would just strengthen my argument to move this along and not have this stalled up here.
Thank you. Commissioner Elmore.
Just one question. Last time we were here, I think you said that the General Plan Steering Committee was put on hold to address, so everybody could, all hands on deck to address this topic. What's the order of magnitude now with state law and then getting the general plan? How are you seeing this roll out?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the General Plan Update Steering Committee has actually been sunset. And we're at the next council meeting on the 25th, we're going to be constituting and appointing members to a new committee called the Housing Element Update Committee. We recommended to the city council that we kind of focus on housing, land use element, and the circulation element, and environmental justice policies, because simply there's a deadline to get the housing element done by late 2021. So we want to focus on that. Now, the rest of the elements are important, and we're going to be working on those in the sideline, but they may take a little bit longer. And so that's the reason why the General Plan Update Steering Committee was kind of sunset. We're refocusing our efforts on housing. And as you've indicated, the city has done a housing action plan, which is to, kind of push back on the state legislature, all these mandates. We're also seeking assistance from the legislature, Cotty Petrie Norris and Senator Morlock, to, sponsor legislation that might provide some additional clarity on the laws, exemptions for maybe the extension of time, and CEQA exemptions for the housing element update. And so we're doing all of these fronts right now. But then additionally, there's another front, and again, this comes out of the Housing Action Plan approved by the City Council, which is to, we're going to push back on these as best we can, but we're also going to have to take the path that we're going to have to comply. And so again, this is entirely consistent with the City Council's Housing Action Plan and policy. And to the extent that they might want to change that to offer a different path, then I think they can make that decision after the commission pushes this up to them.
All right. Commissioner Lowry, any further comments in your professional world outside of this?
I deal outside of California. I deal outside of California, so work in states that trust their local communities to do what's appropriate for them.
All right, let's proceed on if there's no more questions. And
I'll make a motion, Commissioner Kedding. I'll just do a slight tweak on it. I'm very hesitant on all of this, but the state is forcing our local government to do this, so I'm happy to make the recommendation. We send this to the council, but I'd like to redo item number 3 on the recommendation to, instead of saying approve, to recommending the city council approve zoning code amendments, I'd like it to switch to say review instead of approve, because I want them to. I don't think we are giving an endorsement until the city council, who is well equipped on this specific issue of housing. I'd like them to approve it. I don't want to make a recommendation from us that we're approving. We want them to review it, because as our commissioners, I think, understand, it's best to move this along today and get this to them as soon as possible, because we're operating on a state default instead of our own. So I think it's important that it moves along to the council, but I don't want to give this body's blanket endorsement and approval. I think it's more of we want them to start reviewing it, and we've looked at it. We've found some errors. We've found some changes. We've addressed some of the concerns, and will be presented to the council, but I think that it doesn't give a blanket endorsement. So I'm looking to make that motion that we review zoning code amendments CA 2019-08, modifying regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units, and then adopt PC 2020-007, recommending the city council authorize staff to submit Coastal Program Amendment number LC 2019-008 to the Coastal Commission.
Discussion on the motion, because it's kind of you threw a curveball, and it's not the Houston Astros. I don't think we can do that. We can't just make a recommendation now. I mean, we either are going to send this back up, council will have to adopt it in the final form.
Yeah, so that might just be a little bit nuanced here. I mean, the resolution that's been provided does specify approve. We can certainly make that modification in the resolution that's ultimately signed for approval. I think just big picture, these are zoning code amendments, and zoning code amendments are required to come before the Planning Commission, since you are the planning body, and we are here to receive information from members of the public as well as you and staff, and then take that and bundle it up and hopefully have it into better form as it goes to the council. So, we can certainly hear all the information that's been provided. We can go ahead and make that minor tweak to the resolution that is ultimately signed, and have this move forward to the city council.
Well, doesn't it state in the resolution, bold print, we are recommending to the city council adoption of the zoning code.
Yeah,
We're
Mr.
not
Chair-
just saying, think about it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think as Elon indicated, it's a pretty minor change to the resolutions. It would be, changing the word adopt in the recommendation section, the recital section of the resolution, as
Right.
well as in the title of the resolution. So, I mean, you're definitely forwarding up to them for their review, and I think that's an appropriate recommendation, well within the commission's purview. And then the council can make those policy decisions and then, adopt the ordinance as amended or fixed, or take whatever action the council chooses, if it's appropriate.
So we're not adopting it, we're recommending a review of this.
Just on item 3 there, it just says approve, strike that out, and just say review.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
you
but
would
I'm
be-
looking at the resolution, it's in the first sentence of the bold print, handwritten 15.
Yeah.
Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Newport Beach recommending City Council adopt, not review.
Yeah, we would change that name, Mr. Chair, if I may. We would change that to review the zoning code amendment, and then we would also make a change to the recital section, which is on handwritten page 17. Again, it says recommends approval. We would just change that word to review. And I think that with those minor changes, I suppose if there's a similar statement elsewhere, we would make that change as well. And then the city council has your input. And obviously, we've heard your concerns, and we can relay them through a staff report to the council so that they have a full indication of what you're thinking.
Any other comments on this? All right. We need a second on the modification for approval to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance PA 2019-248.
I'll second the motion.
Staff thinks it's all right.
The motion carries 5-1 with Commissioner Lowry voting no.
All right, we close that hearing. Thank you for sticking around for that exciting discussion. We're going on to item 8, staff and commissioner items. Item number 5, motions for reconsideration. Are there? I never hear them. Motion for reconsideration? I hear none from the commission. Staff doesn't have anything? Okay. Community development director's report, please.
Thank you, Chair Kenning. I just want to give you a couple of quick updates. The last meeting of the council on the 11th, they did approve the cottage preservation ordinance amendment. They also went ahead and did the Lido Isle height amendment. They had a first reading of that, and they did pass it without any changes. The council spent a fair amount of time on short-term lodging with an amendment that they've passed, and we're going to be bringing that back at a future meeting for adoption. But it does establish some greater protections related to short-term rentals. It also they're going to be creating a call service for any complaints that we have, and so this is in response to some issues related to that, and so that's they spent a fair amount of time on that, but that's coming forward. On the upcoming agendas, we do have a meeting, the next meeting, where we've got the Newport Animal Hospital, and we have our annual general plan housing element and progress report, which is a required item for the Planning Commission to review and the City Council. So that's on track for your next meeting on March 5th. I apologize. One other item, I know I announced at the very beginning of the meeting, we've got this amendment that we're working on related to residential design standards and third floor building massing. It was on your last agenda. We did push that off of the agenda. We're going to be having a community meeting on March the 9th here in the Civic Center. And we've got a flyer that's available on our website, kind of explaining some of the standards that we're looking at. And we wanted to bring this one back to the community to get additional input before we brought it to the commission and then ultimately the city council for review.
What
This
time is that?
It's 6 o'clock on March the 9th in the community center.
Across the hall here?
Across the hall here, exactly. And so we wanted, again, go back out to the community, seek additional input before we finish this one up. And Jaime Murillo is the planner on that one. And so if there's any questions that the commission has after the meeting, you know, he can help you, assist you with that. But maybe coming to that meeting might be a good one and learn what the council is wanting to do. This is a council-initiated amendment that we're working on. And that concludes my report.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Any requests for?
Can I ask a question? I was just going to ask Jim a question real quick. Did they, for the Housing Element Committee there, did they seat everyone on that committee yet, or is it still in process for that?
It is still in process. At the
Okay.
next meeting, next Tuesday, there will be an agenda item for appointment of the new committee.
Oh,
I think
so,
it's
okay.
going to be a 9-member committee, if I remember correctly. And so they'll be making those appointments at the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
And I was looking back, cleaning out some files, and I noticed about 9 months ago, or maybe 6, there was discussion of starting a traffic commission, and Simone brought it to us and wanted to know if we would also act as that. And did it go anywhere? I thought we said, sure, why not?
Chairman, we have had some discussions about that. Again, this is something that the city council is kind of discussing. And so there is talk to maybe add some additional responsibilities to the planning commission to kind of review kind of large scale of issues of concern with traffic. And we're still kind of working through those details, and we don't have a draft policy for the city council to consider at this point in time.
All
But
right.
it's something that's still being worked on, but it'll be coming back probably in the spring or early summer.
Let's call it a wrap.